holiday message of helping others, even when times look dark. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. And I thought in time for the Christmas season, Hanukkah season, holiday season, that maybe stepping aside from politics just for a moment might be something interesting. And I have with me a guest today. I don't have much to say. I'm just going to let her talk pretty much the whole show, because her story strikes me as something that many of us might need to hear at the holiday seasons. You know, we're conditioned to think of Christmas as a time of joy, and that's all. And we get these images from Hallmark movies and Hallmark Christmas cards and storefront windows that it's all about being happy, it's all about shopping, it's all about glitter and shine and gold and silver and tinsel and so forth. And that if you feel down during the holiday season, or if your troubles overcome you during the holiday season and you can't put on that face of joy that you're kind of expected to wear for the entire month of December, that something's wrong with you, that maybe you should just stay inside, maybe you should just stay in bed and just wait out for the new year. Well, maybe that's why suicide spikes during the holiday season, because the expectations of people so overwhelms and they figure, why bother? I can't do it anymore. And the holiday season depresses and so forth because they can't take part in that joy. And so what do you do? What do you do? Not just at the holiday season, but in general, in life, when things are so overwhelming, how do you go about and continue to live? Especially, and I want to say especially, those of faith. Because sometimes it seems to me that if you're a believer, if you believe in God and you have faith, and you wear your faith openly, that because you have faith, that you're expected to just move past life's difficulties, that difficulties don't get you down, that because you have faith, then you are automatically supposed to rise above any sort of darkness or any sort of hard times you have in life and just smile right through, because that's what faith is, right? Well, my guest today is going to talk a little bit about the troubles that she has faced. And just listening to her tone, you would think, geez, what troubles has she faced? But I can tell you many troubles, many difficulties, and her faith, which she wears on her sleeve, which she is very open about, is a very real, genuine faith. And so listen in to what Kristen Christy has to say. I'm going to read a bio from projecthealingheroes.org. She is listed on this website for good reason. Here's what it says on that website about her bio. Kristen Christy is a master resilience trainer and resilience expert. She was named the 2018 AFI Air Force Spouse of the Year, a 2019 Top 30 Women Military Influencer, and a 2020 Remarkable Woman finalist. Kristen is co-founder of the National Veterans Vocational Village Foundation, an advisor for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and creator of National Resilience Day. An international speaker, she shares, and I'm going to leave that open because she's going to share it here, but she shares much. Kristen Christy, I want to thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. It is so great to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. It's my pleasure, Cheryl.
There's a lot I want to cover with you, but I wanted to start with your contribution to the book, Uncovering the Brave Within, Vulnerable Stories from Female Impact Leaders. What did you write about in that?
So I wrote about shame and guilt.
Oh, heavy topics.
Very heavy topic. I lived with shame and guilt for 10 years. My first husband took his life 4 years after deployment, 3 days before he pinned on colonel in the Air Force. We had two boys, and they were 14 and 12 at the time. And for the following 10 years, the shame and guilt, I call them the siblings. They had an invitation to our house and lived within the walls of my mind for 10 years before I really came to understand that there's no shame, and the guilt was misplaced. It was really regret, right? There's a difference between guilt and regret. And if I could go back, I would do things differently. But the understanding that I did the best that I could with the tools that I had, and that helped me get over the shame part of it.
That's a heavy topic to open with. Were you raised in a faith? Were you raised to believe in God? Did that help? How did that help?
Oh, yes. I really cannot imagine anyone going through one of life's tests, right? Cheryl, you've been through a 10 out of 10 on the pain scale. Everyone has experienced a 10 out of 10 on the pain scale. It just, sometimes it stays longer. But without our faith as a firm foundation for me and my children, I don't know where we would be. One, it was the faith in our Lord and Savior. And two, I will tell you, the community at church was the one that came around us and really bolstered us up. They were our safety net. And, I am who I am today because of and in spite of the circumstances, but I stand on that firm foundation.
But that wasn't your first test of pain, because I understand that when you were 16, you were on your way to being a heck of an athlete. I don't know what sport, but you can detail that. And then you suffered a medical issue. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. And I will tell you that the lessons I learned from that helped me with the suicide and ultimately my older son missing. But at 15 years old, we had just moved to Germany. My dad was in the Air Force. I was a world-class athlete in tennis and golf. In October of 1983, so 40 years ago this year, I had played someone. She was 98th in the world, ranked 98th. She was 14 years old. I was 15, unranked, and I beat her. She went on to become the number one women's tennis player for, I think it was about 7 years. She changed the face of women's tennis before Serena Williams came on board. And it was a highlight, not because I beat her, but because the training that I had been going through for so long was paying off. And then the following week, I won the golf championship for all the American high schools in Germany. And I beat the number one boy. I was prouder of that accomplishment. I'm very competitive. You can't tell. Even 40 years later, I still am. And then 2 weeks after that, I experienced a massive stroke on my right side, my predominant side, as a result of a malformed vein in the very center of my brain. And that explained the headaches I'd been having for 2 months. The doctors just assumed it was because we had moved overseas, the stressors of training. I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to tennis practice, then go to my junior year in high school, and then golf practice. But they didn't know I was an uber extrovert, and I loved moving, and I loved being driven. But it took me a year and a half after brain surgery to learn to walk again. I'm not extremely graceful when I walk. I'm about 85% of where I was before. And I write with my left hand now. I'm a southpaw because my right hand doesn't work very well. But the lessons I learned, my faith plays a huge part in recovery.
You have to talk about some of the lessons you learned, because what you described would be devastating to many teenagers, right? That must have been your whole world golf and tennis at the time, because the training it takes is just phenomenal for that. And then to have that taken away overnight. Talk about lessons learned from that.
Yeah, I learned that my identity is not based on what I do. Our identities are not based on what we do. My identity had been placed on being an athlete. And with that taken away, I was still the same person, competitive, driven, kind, funny. I thought so anyway. But it's the character. It's our character that defines our identity. And I was able to find new avenues for my talent. And that's where was so important, but I wasn't able to do it on my own. It took the superpower of our community to come alongside of me as the stroke survivor and my family as they were trying to navigate all of this. And I could not have done it without them. You know, when we're children, when we're babies, we learn to crawl before we learn to walk. And I needed to learn to crawl again. And my friends, knowing how competitive I was, would come over to the house after school, and we would have crawling races in the circle between the living room and the dining room and the hallway. And, of course, I wanted to win those races and do whatever I could to do that. But it was the faith, my character, knowing that the character was my identity, and the superpower of community and resources.
Even with all that, did you have moments of despair? Because your voice just sounds so upbeat. It almost sounds like, I don't want to say you're glossing over the hard part, but somebody going through some dark times, even with faith, right, there has to be moments of despair and real struggle and doubt. Did you face that yourself?
I absolutely did.
Okay.
For a long time. It ebbed and flowed. There was a point when I was in speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy, and it was when we were driving down the Autobahn. My parents were driving down the Autobahn at 125 miles an hour, and I voiced that I wanted to open up the car door and jump out because my body did not follow what my mind was telling it because of the stroke. And that's when my parents realized that I needed another kind of therapy, and I started seeing a counselor that really helped me in the foundation of the self-limiting beliefs that I had in my own head. But there were days where I didn't want to get out of bed. Even after Dawn died, my boys didn't go to school some days because I couldn't get out of bed to take them to school. And it was my friends that came over, didn't take them to school for me, but they got me out of bed, and they got me to take them to school to be accountable.
The reason I ask is because people who go through dark times, right? Sometimes when they see people who have flourished on the end and come from dark times to the light, it seems like what they see is just the end result, and maybe they blame themselves for not having as an easy time dealing with it as the person that they're looking to. So I was just curious if you struggled and had doubt, and you explained ebbs and flows, which sounds like what most people must go through in dark times.
And I'm really glad you brought that up because, yes, people see me now, and I speak all over the world, and I'm that uber extrovert, and my friends call me an emotional support human. But there are days where the space between my ears, I have self-doubt, limiting beliefs. Sometimes they last a lot longer than I would prefer, but I think I've learned the skills, and that's what I try and do to teach the resilient skills to others, that it's okay to feel the feelings. And I really encourage people to feel those feelings instead of holding them back. Feel those feelings, have safe places, safe people that you can feel those feelings with. And then a lot of people talk about bouncing back. I think bouncing back is important. However, if you remember Bozo the Clown, the blow-up clown with the sand in the bottom, and you would hit him, and he would hit the floor and then bounce back?
Yeah, that creepy-looking clown. Yes, I do.
Exactly. So he would bounce back, but guess what, Cheryl? He was in the same place. And I don't want to be in the same place when I bounce back, and then it's moving forward. How do you move forward knowing that you're going to have some setbacks? But that's when you rely on gratitude or reframing. I talk about reframing a lot. Just in the way we talk, instead of saying, I have to go pick up the kids from soccer practice, how about I get to pick up the kids from soccer practice? I mean, just the sentence structure,
right.
Just by changing that, or even the word no. I mean, how many times do we give the answer no, or we hear the answer no? And what did we do as children when we went to one parent and asked for something and they said no? We went to the other parent.
Right.
Or another household member. We found the next opportunity. No is an acronym for next opportunity, except when it comes to our bodies, no means no. That's the caveat that I put in there. But I talk about finding that next opportunity. And when we have to tell someone no, because we don't know what they're going through in life, we don't know what ebb and flow they're going through, when we say no, if we can spend a little bit of time helping them find that next opportunity, because they may have those blinders of despair on that we don't see, and we can help tutor them through life's lessons.
And you've done a remarkable job. You have a campaign going on that I want to talk about suicide prevention, especially at these holiday times where, believe it or not, it's a lot of people think of suicide at the holiday times. But I wanted to, you slid in something a few minutes ago about your missing older son. Can you expand on that? What was going on with that?
Yeah, Ryan was 14 when his dad died. He was almost 15 years old. He was at that age where he was kind of transferring from being, mom as me as his favorite to dad, more following his dad. But he gave the eulogy at his dad's funeral, and very proud of him for that. But about a year after the suicide, he was diagnosed with bipolar. And bipolar, from what I understand from his doctors, typically presents itself in the early to mid-20s. And he was 16 when he was diagnosed. His doctors felt that the suicide possibly triggered the bipolar in him early. And I think, as his mom, not as a therapist or anything, but as his mom, that if he had had those 5, 6, 7 years to mature, maybe he wouldn't have started self-medicating with marijuana and then getting into heroin and alcohol and all that, trying to self-medicate instead of following the doctor's prescriptions with those, what they call cocktails. But one day he called me. Our relationship had mended. He had gotten off of meth. I was so proud of him. He had his own business. I felt like he was on a really good track. And he called and said, Mom, I'm going to Hawaii for 4 months. He had been accepted to a program and to learn self-sustaining farming, yoga, and meditation. And, he was 22. I felt like whatever he felt like he needed to do to get himself on the right track and keep that, then I was willing to support him in whatever he needed. And it ends up, Cheryl, that I had taken him to go to Hilo, Hawaii, to this resort, and he never showed up. He never applied. It was all a ruse. We found out 4 months later when he didn't come home. He was just going to be off the grid, and he's been off the grid for over 8 years now. And as a woman of faith, I pray that he's on the side of heaven. As a mom, I just want to know that where he is, and that his mama loves him so much. And there is nothing, absolutely nothing he could do or not do that will ever change that.
Have you tried to find him, or are you just giving him his space?
No, we've tried to find him. We've had some private eyes look for him. He is not used to his social security number nor his passport. And we did the best that we could when we first found out. Now, we were on food stamps at the time, and so the money was scarce to be able to hire a really good private eye. But just a couple years ago, we had a private eye look, and there was nothing. So I just, hope and pray, and I have faith that, he grew up in the church, and if he's on this side of heaven, I pray that he's well, and that he knows that he can call home at any time. And if he's not, I know where he is.
Well, that's a torture, Kristen.
It is.
Jeez. Yeah. It's really amazing, and I know you hear this all the time, your story, right? It's really amazing because the fact that you don't just curl up on the couch with a bag of Cheetos in the dark every day, and you don't just write inspiring stories, you speak stories of inspiration and motivate other people to try and do what God put them on earth to do, such as your amazing campaign, Suicide Prevention, which is sort of God's glory, making, good of bad. So could you talk a little bit about your work there?
Yes. Taking our mess and making it the message, and taking our test and making it the testimony, and glorifying him in all that we do is what, can you tell? It just sets my soul on fire. And it heals me being able to tell our story. And the aftermath, we don't hear enough about, I think, the aftermath of suicide to give people that pause. But 2 years after Don died, in 2010, is when I started advocating for a 3-digit number for the Suicide Lifeline. And so that was 2010. In 2019 is when the FCC finally came on board, and in 2020 it was signed by President Trump as an executive order, and in July of last year, of 2022, it went nationwide. 988 is the new Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's a 3-digit number. It is, if you remember the 800 number, 800-273-TALK was, and still is, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number. 988, if you think of those two numbers as URLs, like website addresses,
right,
and they go to the same website. So 988 is not a new organization. It's just, it routes the number to the already established in 2005, the suicide hotline.
It's just much easier to remember, right?
It is. It is 988. Now, the Lifeline has increased phone calls in the last year by 35%. You can also text to 988. And I know, like, my younger son, who's 28 now, would much rather text than call and talk to someone. So they have the texting ability. If you're a veteran or military, you can dial 1 once you're connected to reach someone with a cultural understanding of being a veteran or in the military or a family member, and then dial 2 for Spanish speakers. Texting has gone up 1,000% since last year, since we're breaking down those barriers to make it easier to call to get help. And it's not just for you when you're in crisis. It's for you when someone you care about, a family member, someone in your community is in crisis. You can call, and it's okay to say, I'm calling for a friend. Can you help me to help my friend? Or better yet, call together say, let me dial the phone and let's get them on the speaker and let's work this out together. We are not made to do life alone, are we, Cheryl?
That's wonderful work that you're doing, really. It's just, it's amazing how you, like I said, get up and keep going every day and do selfless work for others, not just to make yourself feel better or to self-medicate, which is even worse. I just want to finish with this one question. I know we've gone over on our time. You do have time for one more question, yes? Is that okay?
Yes, I sure do.
So if somebody's listening right now, because as you pointed out early on in our discussion, that everybody has gone through a pain level of 10 event in life, just sort of sum up some sort of advice that you would like to give somebody listening right now going through some issue, whether it's a level 10 or level 5, it doesn't matter.
Right. We all have that understanding of the pain level. And I really want to encourage people that shame off you. Don't even bring shame or guilt into the equation if you can. But more importantly, have an accountability partner, whether it's a spouse or a friend. Get that person on your contact list on speed dial and have a conversation with them and say, can I call you when I don't feel good, when things aren't okay? Can I call you when things are going great and I need a cheerleader to be with me? And offer to do the same with them. I talk about HOPE. We talked about an acronym, NO, before, but HOPE is an acronym for Hold On Pain Eases. The E doesn't stand for end. It ebbs and flows. But it also stands for help one person every day. And when you can get outside of your own circumstances and help someone else, it helps your pain ease and it helps their pain ease.
Yes.
You've got resources. There are so many resources in every community. 988 is one of those for mental health crisis. You've got, just a plethora. Every city is different. A lot of the resources available are in every city, but they may have a different name. So find out what the resources. In fact, I want your listeners today to find 2 resources in their community that they can put in their phone, whether that's, a domestic violence shelter or a homeless shelter or counseling center, something like that. I want to encourage them to put those numbers in their cell phones and have those contacts available.
That's perfect because, like you said, nothing makes you feel better like helping somebody else. Really, charity is just amazing that way. And 988 is the number if people want that again, easy to remember. And in the meanwhile, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak so openly about your life so far. Kristen Christy, it was great to have you on Bold and Blunt. I would love to have you back someday as a guest.
I would love that. Thank you, Cheryl. And remember, hope is not canceled.
It's an amazing story of inspiration. So much there to listen to and to draw inspiration from, especially during this Christmas season, this Christmas, Hanukkah, holiday season. I want to thank you for listening. Remind you, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at washingtontimes.com, where please subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter, as well as my Tuesday and Thursday Bold and Blunt podcasts. You may also get Bold and Blunt at Real Life Network, and just to make it easy for you, anywhere podcasts are offered. Tune in next time, and in the meanwhile, don't forget to stay blunt, stay blue.